the halls where echoes ring, Baker High's veterans sing tales of valor, scars of time. Donald Ray, forever prime. Through the fields of fire and sand, brothers fell, their spirits stand. Each scar a story, each heart so true, bound by bonds they gave for you. Lest we forget their sacrifice, echoes of valor they give through the battles, through the peace, their spirits still forever cease. Memories of laughter, tears and pain. In this place, their courage reigns. Though some returned, some didn't stay, their legacy forever they'll convey. In the shadows of the night, their spirits still take flight. Guardians of freedom, they did fight. In their honor, let us unite. With every step, with every breath, their memory we hold so tight. For the price of freedom they paid, their sacrifice will never fade. Lest we forget their sacrifice, echoes of valor they give through the battles, through the peace, their spirits still forever cease.
Hello, I'm Easton Azario. I'm the president of the Baker High School Alumni Association. And at this time, we have the honor of having Rodney Wolfinger, class of 1969. It's pretty good while since 69, isn't it, Rodney?
Oh, yeah.
Rodney, I want to thank you very, very much for coming over.
I appreciate you asking.
Rodney, was your dad military?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I was born at Fort Benning.
You were born in, oh, you must be born at the old hospital then.
Yeah, on main post.
Yeah, on main post.
Real quick, because this is more, you know, my dad too. I was born in a barracks building. I was born in '51, middle of the Korean War, hospital full of wounded guys.
Mm.
They had drugged some old buildings out across the street in this field. Set them up. My mom said they just put curtains down, section it off. She was having me, her youngest sister, whose husband was also some foxhole in Korea. They were due around the same time. My aunt had to go one afternoon. She had her baby that evening. My mama had to go that evening she had me the next morning. We both delivered by civilian doctor from in town. Doctors then, you know, it was so busy. Ones in town, when they got done, they'd go out there and help. And they found out real quick, my mama and her sister were sisters. My mama, you know, then had 4 kids, you know. This was her first. She's her baby sister. And the nurses said, hey, look, you're gonna just, you've done this for, you're gonna have to help us, you take care of your sister. And my mama just told them, well, if that's the case, we'll just go home. And they did, after a day. And,
You know,
but I was actually born in a barracks.
you know, this is the first time I've learned that they had, I'm not surprised, but they had at the old hospital, that we all remember, the old hospital and on main post, I didn't realize they had wounded soldiers from the Korean War there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised. I would have thought they would have all been.
It was, you know, it's no name, it just
No.
was U.S. Army
I
Hospital.
would have thought it would have been maybe like the hospital, army hospitals on the west side of the United States.
Well, they were all full.
Yeah,
That's why.
yeah. So Rodney, after graduating in '69, what made you decide to go into the service?
Well, I was going to school at University of Texas at Arlington.
Okay.
My brother was living in the Dallas area, and I went out there, played baseball 1 year. It was a brand new school. They were still building buildings. And I, you know, college, you know, I'm a guy. What do you, like I ain't thinking about nothing but having fun. And I overheard some of the other students talking one day, and a couple of them were telling a few more that they were getting their tuition paid by the Texas National Guard. So I asked them about it. They said, yeah, you know, go over here, and I finally found this unit in Fort Worth, and went in and talked to them, and they said, yeah, as long as you're in the National Guard, you know, pay this. And I said, I knew all my life I would eventually go in the Army, you know, but I knew enough about it to get you foolishness out of it, you know, before you go. And so they said, well, we'll sign you up. And they gave me this form and said, you get this typed up and bring it back to us. Fine. And I looked, and there was a table over there with just a typewriter sitting there. And I said, does this typewriter work? Yeah. Can I use it? I fill this out. Well, sure, go ahead. And so I sat down. After 2 years of typing at Baker High School, I just typed it all out. And then this captain and this staff sergeant sitting there, and I didn't know it, and they were both stared at me. I said, what? Type pretty good, yeah. And he said, here. The captain said, I'll approve that. And he said, you gotta come back here such a time. And I went back, and he said, we're gonna put you on active duty. And active guard. I said, what? And he said, you're gonna come in here in the afternoon and work. And what it was, typing. Neither one of them could type. And I just started doing that. I think I was making $188 a month, you know. And that's it. And then eventually that led into, go to basic training, which I went to in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Fort Leonard Wood, yeah.
Yeah. And when I came back, I was maybe there about a month. I went regular Army and went to San Antonio to go to medic school.
did you volunteer to go medical, or did they
Yeah,
assign
yeah,
you? You did?
I wanted to do that.
Okay, okay. I've seen I've seen that hospital in San Antonio Forum right then. So you went to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood.
Portland,
Yeah, and then after basic training, you went to San Antonio
San Antonio.
for medical training, and then what?
Went from there. 2 days before we all left, personnel sergeant said, "Go. I'm gonna put your assignments on the board to the class. Outside my office, y'all come by there and look at it. Anybody that wants to swap, you got to come in tomorrow and together, and we'll swap." I said, "Okay." I didn't go by right then. I went to lunch, and this girl in my class, she come looking at me, found me. She said, oh my goodness, you got to trade with him. You got to trade with him." "Why?" And she goes, "You got Puerto Rico." I didn't even know we had an army post in Puerto Rico. And she said, "You got Puerto Rico, and that's my home. I probably never ever get to be stationed there." And I said, "Well, let me go look and see what she got, Find her name. Triple Army Medical Center, Honolulu, Hawaii." I said, you don't," she said, "that's my home."
That's right.
I said, "Okay," and went to Triple Army Medical Center in Hawaii, and I worked, go right in, finishing processing. My first day working, they assigned me to the trauma unit. And I'm like, oh no, But I tell you what, your only unwritten rule is after 12 months you could transfer to another part of the hospital, because that's tough work, And
In the trauma area that you were at, I know what trauma is. What kind of trauma were you experiencing?
we were the only trauma unit in Hawaii, so we got even civilians.
Oh, okay, I understand now. Now,
And in helicopter crashes and plane crashes and car wrecks and
yeah, I
because
understand.
in Hawaii you got Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and
Right.
Coast Guard, and we're all military guys. If we can screw it up, we'll find a way to do it.
Now, to give you a little information, back then when you didn't know Puerto Rico had an army.
I didn't know we had an Army base there.
Let me tell you, in World War II, they had the largest naval base and the largest Air Force base. And my dad was in World War II. He was in the Guard. He was already a Master Sergeant. And when active duty, they started a camp, and they had about 3 or 4 basic training camp. And I've spoken to some of the sergeants that were cadre, and I just died laughing, because boy, it was just as bad as here in the States.
Yeah.
It was nothing for it was nothing political correct. And I still remember what one of them told me. Whenever them guys come in, they say, "Now whoever's got a bad disposition, you better hang him on the wall, because I'll take care of the rest of it." But anyway, I didn't mean to get on that.
No, that's
So
how I got to Hawaii.
yeah. So after Hawaii, where did you go to?
El Paso.
Oh, okay.
I had 2 choices when I was leaving. Fort Bliss and El Paso, or it's Army Military Academy, West Point. And I'm like, what the heck? I know nothing about that. I talked to the first sergeant, and I talked to the hospital sergeant major, and I said, I don't understand. Why am I going to go there? And he goes, "Bud, everywhere you got soldiers, you're going to have a supply guy, you're going to have a truck driver, you're going to have a medic." He said, "They have a clinic there because they got a bunch of students." And I'm like, "Oh, well," I said, "that's way up north in New York, and I'm from Columbus. I just spent 3 years in Paradise." I already knew they weren't going to be sending me anywhere else any better than my first assignment. And I said, well, I'll go to El Paso, you know, and it
Now,
was 120 degrees.
let me ask, at West Point, you weren't gonna go to college?
No,
You
I
were
was
just
gonna
gonna
work in the clinic.
There, right. Back in my times, we had a section to go train those, the students that went right there. It was a good duty. I had a chance, but it was during football season. I was gonna play football. Okay, now, you told me here a while back that you also served some time in Central America?
Yeah.
Which country? Could it be in Honduras?
Most days you wouldn't, yeah. From El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua. They may have been another, I don't know. I didn't know where we were half the time.
That part I understand.
I was in the first sergeant came to me one day, that's when I was in the 16th MASH.
Excuse me, for people that don't know, what does SMASH stands for?
Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. I don't know that they use that acronym anymore. I think they just call it field hospital. You know,
I never heard of MASH until the TV program.
Yeah.
And,
But we were already down there in Honduras, humanitarian mission. We did a lot of those into Alaska, Mexico, a couple, 2 or 3 times.
What was involved in that humanitarian?
You find a crossroad in the jungle, and a lot of times they'd be one building. That was the church, that was the school, you know. Everybody's living in lean-to huts, you know. And you just show up. We worked with some, down there we worked with a group of about 6 or 7 nuns that was doing a mission work down there. And they would put the word out, we're gonna be at this crossroad tomorrow. 7 o'clock till dark. And then they just lined up. And everything from a lot of major stuff we couldn't mess with. We had a dentist with us, and they more or less, if they had a bad tooth, they just had to pull it out, because we weren't going to be there the next day or the day after for them to come for a crown or anything like that, you know. We even taught the chaplain how to pull teeth. That's how many there was lined up, you know. And just whatever, you know, you could, you know, take care of. We had lots of vaccination, you know. We probably had more vaccines than the regular hospital, but that was the main thing we were doing. And then the next day we'd head out to another location. Yeah, it was, you know, it was bittersweet. You know, felt real good about helping them.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
On the way, when you're riding back to your base camp, you're thinking, you know, when or if they ever going to get to see, you know, somebody medical again. You know, you just don't know.
I've had similar experience in Iran. You know, I understand. You know, and I'm sure all you guys felt. I said, say, take for example, Leonardwood. You know, just like I used to talk about Fort Campbell, that's the worst place in the world. You know what? When I was in Iran, all of us guys saying, you know, Fort Campbell wasn't so bad after all. Hey, we get 3 meals a day. We got a bunk. You know, and
I learned real early. First sergeant I had, he said, the best place you've ever been in the Army is the place you just left. I was like, you crazy? I hate that. And he said, no, you're going to get to the new place and you're going to stumble around. You don't even know where the bathroom's at, you know, and you're going to get embarrassed because you don't know where this is, that, and you're going to get so frustrated and you're going to say, I wished I was back at so-and-so, you know. And he said, but then that wears off, and now that place that you're at, and same thing when you leave, you know. I never had a bad assignment. I never had that many opportunities to pick, you know. Like I said, I had two when I left there to go, left Hawaii to go to San Antonio. And when I finished school, they had a program then that we probably had 60 people in my medic class. And you want to be a combat medic, you stay 4 more weeks. And but you know, you get picked. You don't. They volunteers you. So I stayed 4 other weeks. Learned a lot of stuff, and went from there to Fort Riley, Kansas. That's where the 16th Mass was.
So you were considered a combat medic.
Combat medic, and I got EMT certification, paramedic certification, and LPN license, and so you know, over the time.
You know, and David might remember this. We had a veteran from Baker. He lives in South Carolina, I think, and he went in as a medic, came out as a surgeon.
Yeah.
and then he got a commission, and he retired as a full colonel.
I worked with a surgeon in Hawaii, and he was going through the surgical residency program they had there. He was a crew chief on a rescue helicopter.
Okay.
And he said, I decided that I wanted to be on the other end, you know. You know, we'll pick the guy up and take him over here, and where the air conditioning and the heat is, you know. And he, you know, he did that same thing from being a para-swimmer, I think they call him, something like that. Hey guys, in the other, you know, Coast Guard or whatever, if I got that wrong, just slap the television.
You know, most veterans, regardless of what field they're in, they think that's the only thing there is. And then until they see somebody else, like you, a medic, you know, you just don't think about and you know, it's been said, well, I say it's been said, it was me and a bunch of guys that were veterans talking, what's the most dangerous job in combat, or any kind? Combat medic. And that movie, Heartbreak Ridge, with that, I mean, look what the guy did, you know, it's a hero. It's nothing but a hero. And you know, and speaking of heroes, come on in. And speaking of heroes, you knew about, you say you knew Donald Ray Johnston?
Skeeter.
Yeah, Skeeter. Yeah, that's great. Doggone it, you know, you were busy then, and how long were you in the service?
20 years, 1 month, and 10 days.
So you had an interesting 21 years, 1 month, and 10 days then.
20 years. 20 years. I knew from the first day I went in, I wasn't going to stay, you know, over 20. I liked the military, you know, liked the Army. It fed and clothed me when I was growing up, you know, stitched me up when I fell off a bicycle and whatnot. And I learned the security that you get from that. And my dad was in for 32 years, my older brother 26 years, and I told them both that, you know, hey, every day you go to work after you hit 20 years, you're working for half pay, because you could stay at home and they're gonna send you half.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go in, you're just getting the other half. And I said, that was, you know, it was fine for me. It was somebody else's turn, you know.
You know, Rodney, I learned something new. I even learned something from you. You know, I mean, it's interesting. I tell people, if you really want to find out what happened at that particular, in the service, you're not going to read about it anywhere. You know,
No.
You got to ask another veteran, and the veterans will tell you exactly, you know.
I'll tell you
what it
the
was
story
like.
I told you not long ago. I'll tell them that story. When when we were had the MASH hospital in Honduras, and going to be coming back, my first sergeant came to me and said, "You gonna stay?" What are we gonna stay for? You know. And he said, "You'll find out. This guy's be coming by tomorrow before we load out." And okay, there's 2 civilian guys and 6 combat MPs. You know, and all you combat MPs out there, y'all are some tough guys. They are. And there's another, I called him kid, you know, he's 20-something years old. Ronald Richardson. He was a signal guy, a radio operator. And we had these Jeep Broncos or Land Cruisers or something. And we had out with these 2 civilian guys. And we were just going, meeting people, meeting other guys. You know, go way over there and talk to them, and we'll stand over here and guard the vehicles. Well, we got ambushed almost every day. You know, and that ain't fun. And just, you know, you got 6 guys, you know, combat MPs guarding these 2 civilians that, man, didn't speak 20 words to you if they got even close enough to talk to you. Like, you just figure it out, well, civilians, you know. And we,
Right, excuse me, where is this at now?
I think we were in Nicaragua.
In Nicaragua. Yeah, that explains.
It's kind of hard. There ain't no street signs, you know, and maps ain't all that great. But things turned real bad one day, and Double R, we called him Double R, Ronald Richardson. And Double R got hit in the neck, and I just couldn't stop the bleeding. And you know, all just to, you know, take these 2 guys around. You know, that lasted about 6 weeks. And you know, I had patients die in the hospital, you know, some of the trauma stuff, you know, you didn't, you know, you couldn't help them, you know. Some of the people with disease or stuff, you know, you knew that they were gonna die, but you know, you're behind a vehicle, somebody's about where David is, the front of the vehicle, and you know, bam, right there, they're gone. And it's
You know,
he was from Shreveport, Louisiana. I made it a point. I come back to Fort Riley, and then I eventually left Fort Riley, went to Frankfurt, Germany. But I was coming home on leave before we went over there, and drove down to Shreveport to see the mama. And I just kept telling her I was sorry. I was sorry. And that's all I could say. And she hugged me and told me, "Thank you for getting my baby home." You know. But I had to do that, you know, just had to, you know. Kind of felt a little better, you know, when I left. We stayed in touch over the years. She died about 5 years ago. But you know, that was the bump in the road to my career, in my career.
Yeah.
Then I went to Germany. Well, before I went to Germany, we come back on that thing. I got volunteered
Imagine that.
again to be a medical recruiter, to recruit doctors and nurses. Oh God, I don't know. Went to Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indianapolis, second largest building in the military.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's where the finance center is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, big building. That's where the recruiting school is. So I went there, had to go through regular recruiting school, and then it was 3 or 4 weeks for medical part. The Army only had 11, you know. So I don't know why the school was that long. But anyway, about 4 or 5 months, and I had an area from Kansas up to Minnesota, over to Ohio, and back to Missouri, and that was my area. And did okay. I wasn't any better than any of the rest of them, you know, just right place at the right time. I always made my quota, you know, for 4 or 5 months, and my reward was I got to go to Germany. And then, so I was assigned to U.S. Army Europe, whose headquarters in Frankfurt, and I had all of Europe, and so got to go everywhere, you know, all over Germany, the Netherlands, England 2 or 3 times, Belgium, France, Spain, and Greece, Athens, Greece. You know. So my kids, you know, they got to see places that they'd only seen in school books. So,
Exactly right.
you know, they really enjoyed that. But a name like mine, Wolfinger, can get you in trouble. You know, we wore civilian clothes. You know, that I had a set of orders that said my duty uniform will be, you know, civilian business attire. You know, a coat and a tie. And they didn't want to, like if you went to a college campus, they didn't want like show of force or something like that. It made no difference to me. They gave me $1,300 every December to buy new civilian business attire, you know, for the next year. And if I would wear my uniform sometime according to where I was going, If I had to go see my boss for some reason, who was a brigadier general, I'd, wear my uniform, and you walk by and then, they see this, Wolfinger, Oh, the Germans, they want to start speaking German to you, and this is, that's just the name. The language don't come with it, and
I've had the same problem when they see Nazario, and I be said like in northern part of Indiana, all these Italians, they're speaking to me in Italian. Just so happened I could understand some of it, so I would speak back to them in Spanish, and they'd say, "Oh, I forgot, you're not a paisano."
I got an army buddy of mine stationed in San Antonio, and then he came to Fort Riley, so knew him a long time. Then we wound up, he was in Stuttgart, Germany when I was there, and he's retired down in Florida. Talked to him a lot, and he's Puerto Rican, and he looks it, but they will, Puerto Rican see him, they start, I don't know. He said, "I'm Puerto Rican. My mom and daddy was all Puerto Rican. I'm all Puerto Rican. But I'm from Syracuse, New York. I ain't never been to Puerto Rico a day in my life." He said, "I don't know what they're saying."
Well, Rodney, we got to wind up, but I'm gonna tell you one thing: you could pass for Puerto Rican.
Hey,
That's right.
that's, that beats some others.
Well, I know, but listen, Rodney,
Other things that I've done.
I want to thank you so much.
Oh, no problem.
For sharing.
I appreciate you asking me. I appreciate David doing this. That's you're a good man, sir.
It's just, for Baker High, by God, that many of us veterans, male or female, we represented Baker well.
One last thing. People people need to know this. In the height of the Vietnam War, and they were building up new division out at Fort Benning, so 9,000 kids. My ninth grade class at Baker was 1,000, just the ninth grade.
Yeah.
For 3 years running, Baker High School student body population was the largest high school in the state of Georgia, and just tons of us. Well, our fathers and brothers, sons, started going. And you go into a restaurant or something, or some business, and you see it says like Employee of the Month, and then they have the little tags, January or something. Mr. Boyles put one of those up in the main hallway there, across the front of it.
Really?
With a little. When I left there was 13 of those things up there. Here's thinking, we're gonna put this up. You could get 12, on there, and that's how many.
I don't know if you knew or not, but Mr. Ball was a paratrooper in World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't believe it, just ask him.
Oh, I don't want to take any more time. I can tell you how I found out. Rodney, thanks a million.
Hey, I appreciate it.
I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to wind up. That I have to ask all the veterans. I feel like I know what your answer is going to be. If you had to do it over again, would you do it?
Oh yeah.
Amen.
I get a check every month.
Yeah.
In a couple of weeks, May 1st, I will be retired 30 years.
Oh my goodness.
That's
I tried retiring 23 years ago, and I'm still working. Not full time, but I'm still working. Anyway, thanks a lot, Rodney.
Thank you, guys.
And folks, thank you for watching in. And pretty soon, we're going to be doing another one. So So hang around, hang around, and we'll see you folks later. Take care.
In the halls where echoes ring, Baker High's veterans sing.